Hi everyone, welcome to the 10th and final week of your technical math course. This week we do not have any new topics. We're just going to be reviewing a few things and preparing for your final exam. Please remember that you must complete all of your materials by Thursday night in order for me to post your grades on Friday. So that includes the final. So make sure that you are completing that and prepared. If you have any missing work over the last 9 weeks, you may also turn that in. The only exception is discussions. There's nothing that you can do about the missing discussions since there's no one left to discuss with. But you can turn in all assignments and all quizzes that you may be missing and make sure those are all in by Thursday. So this final exam is going to cover everything since the midterm. So what that means is you're going to be looking at Chapter 3, Chapter 7, Chapter 6, and Chapter 8. So I've just put together a few examples for you out of each, but you are more than welcome to go back and look at the entire PowerPoint for each of these chapters. In Chapter 3, we looked at things about solving equations, how to put those into real-life applications, how to use all of those different things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division to solve equations. And I've given you one example that kind of combines what you needed to know about decimals and percents and solving equations. So here's an example. If we're asked to find 153% of 620, first thing we have to remember is that the word of means multiplied. Also, whenever we're working with percents in an equation, we want to make sure we change that percent to a decimal. So I've done those two things. I've moved the decimal 2 places to the left to change that to 1.53. I changed the word of to times and then the 620. And then I'm just ready to pop it into my calculator. So in this case, we got 948.6. So 153% of 620 is 948.6. So again, just an example of solving equations. The next chapter, Chapter 6, was about ratios, rates, proportions, those types of things. Here's an example of a problem that you might see similar to that. Finding the unit cost of an item. In this particular case, we have a bottle of shampoo that costs $6.49 for 12 ounces. Unit cost means how much is it for 1 ounce. So I used a proportion to solve this one. So I set it up 649 over 12 equals x over 1, or in my case n. I like the letter n better than x. And then we're just going to cross multiply. So 12n equals $6.49. We divide both sides by 12, and you see we get a really long decimal. Make sure when you're taking your final that you read the question carefully, because in this case it says rounding it to the nearest 3 decimal places. So we would round that to 0.541. Chapter 7 is where we get into percents, fractions, and decimals. So being able to convert between all of those are going to be very important. So here's an example of that. We have an unemployment rate of 7.5%. We want to change it to a decimal and a fraction. So I did the fraction first. The first thing you're going to do is just put it over 100. So 7.5 over 100. Then we're going to simplify. First thing I want to do is get rid of that decimal place. So I multiplied top and bottom by 10. So whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. That gives me 75 over 1,000. Then I can look to see, well, what will go into both of those so that I can reduce that fraction. So in this case, 25 was the largest number that would go into both. So it reduces to 3 over 40. Now to change that percent to a decimal, we're just going to move that decimal 2 places to the left. So in that case, we got 0.075. The last chapter that you're going to be covering on your final is Chapter 8. I've given you a couple examples of that one. One is converting, and the other one is doing some of that geometry work. So the first one is converting. Recipe calls for 14 cups of water. How many quarts is that? So we know that there's 4 cups in 1 quart, so we want to know how many quarts is there in 14 cups. So I wrote a proportion. 14 over n equals 4 over 1. Make sure you keep your units of measure matched up properly. So since I have cups on top on one side, I have to have cups on the other. Then we're just going to cross multiply. 4n is going to equal 14. Dividing both sides by 4 gives me n is 3.5 quarts. And then the final example that I've given you is on perimeter. Perimeter of a rectangle is 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. So in this particular example, the rectangle is 20 by 35. So 2 times 20 plus the 2 times 35. So 40 plus 70 gives me 110 for that perimeter. So again, these are just some examples of what you might see on the final exam. Make sure you go back and review everything from these 4 chapters so that you're prepared. Everything must be completed by Thursday once again. And if you have any problems or questions, please make sure you reach out to me. It's been a pleasure having you in this course, and have a great week.